Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Omega Speedmaster 57, the Speedy 57. Very, very interesting watch, and one I've been looking forward to checking out ever since it was announced earlier this year. But first off, before I go any further, I want to thank not the manufacturer, actually, but the retailer, Lewis Jewelers, over in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They are my AD for Omega, as well as Tudor, Tag, Seiko, Breitling, bunch of other folks. And they very well could be your AD too, right? You give DK a call, tell him Nick sent you. He might be able to help you out with some promotional pricing on this guy, help you find the Omega you want, or help you with any of the other brands they carry. They're wonderful folks. They've treated me well over the years. They've got more of my money than I care to admit, and you should give them some love. But anyways, they sent this guy along to me, but as always, they know I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly. It might be a gem, it might be a junk, and they did still loan it along my way. I'll be sending it back to them here shortly, so there you go. Next thing, let's do some size measurement of this watch, and in a lot of ways, that's one of the things that is remarkable about this particular wristwatch, in that it is a full chronograph, but it is not actually that huge, right? So if we measure it with the crown on, we're looking at 43.4. If we measure it without, we're looking at about 40 millimeter overall diameter. The lug-to-lug distance, which is the thing that matters most for folks who are slighter wrist, they're around 47 or so millimeters. The thickness on this guy is not so bad, coming in right around 12.7, 12.8 millimeter worth of thickness, which is a beautiful thing. Lug width on this guy is a very reasonable, let's see here, right around, 20 millimeters, which, by the way, is not 19. Omega has not played that game this time, and I very much appreciate it. But anyways, and then, the readable space of the face, if you want to look at the actual time, you're coming in right around 34 millimeters. There you go. So let's go on ahead, and, well, first off, I want to give you a full little bit of disclaimer here. This wristwatch right here is $8,600 retail. This is, of course, why you do not get into watches, but you do need to keep that in mind. Then I want to let you know the reference number, which is 332.10.41.51.10.001. There are lots of colors and versions of this. This is a green dial version, which was the one they had in stock at that moment. These are a little tricky to get. There's also a black version with sort of an inlay style loom like on this guy over here. There were lots of different colors, but this is the green dial version with the applied indices and whatnot, and it is an absolutely beautiful watch. So let's go on ahead and jump into a review here, although it's worth noting I haven't spent so much time with this guy, so, take everything with a grain of salt. This has mostly been on my desk. So anyways, let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting watch. Start with, on the good side, it's not a moon watch. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, oh my God, Nick, the moon watch is... Yes, it is, absolutely. The moon thing is great, but Omega will not shut up about it. And so it's really nice to have a Speedmaster where they are not shouting moon, moon, moon at the very top of their lungs, right? This has the heritage of being a Speedmaster, but without the annoying, cloying marketing, which I personally appreciate. But that's a little issue, right? Next thing, the bracelet on this guy is very nice. What we have here is a very nice tapering bracelet, and these make this wear very well on a small wrist, as well as making the overall package of the watch a little bit lighter than it otherwise would have been. So that's a beautiful thing, but it also has very granular adjustment, right? If we look at any of the individual links here, the individual links are only about maybe 4.5 millimeters long. These are very, very small links, which is an absolutely beautiful thing. It does have a 1 millimeter quick adjust in there. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but it is a toolless quick adjust, which I appreciate any of that on there. They're using a 20 millimeter lug width, unlike some of the other ones where they've gone with 19 or something stupid like that. So I appreciate that. And the bracelet on the whole is very, very nice. I have a similar bracelet on the Speedy 300 here, and very much appreciate that. So that's good. Next thing, this is sapphire all around. This is a sapphire crystal on the top and a sapphire crystal on the bottom. That's right. That's pretty attractive right there. But it works very well, and there is a very good anti-reflective coating, such that, sure, you're going to get some reflections. That's life. But by and large, this guy looks on the wrist very much like there's nothing there, right? And that's, well, okay, looks like you got a watch on there. I want to be clear, but it doesn't look like there's crystal, so that's a nice thing. Next thing, this guy has very nice case polishing. I'll try and show it off here, keep it a little bit... but what we see here is that you have very nice polished side links here with a brushed center link, which is nice and gives you a little bit of that. You get some polishing on the sides of the case there, as well as a little bit of contrast here with some brushing here. It's just, they've done a very nice job of making this something that feels very, very fancy, but is not incredibly, like, over-the-top, blingy sort of reflective. I think they've done a nice job with the case here. Next thing, the movement on this guy is great. And I'm going to show that off to you here. I'm not going to take the bracelet off here to avoid hurting the thing, but if we take a look here, that is one heck of a movement right there. This is the Omega Master Coaxial 9906, as you might imagine by the fact that it says that literally right there. This is a hand-wound movement. It is a chronograph movement, and it is an absolutely beautiful thing. It is using a double barrel power reserve, double barrel, barrel spring, mainspring, which means that you get a very big power reserve. You got about 60 hours worth of power on this guy, which is a great thing for a hand-wound watch to have. It has a date feature, as you can see on the bottom of there. It is a chronograph, meaning if I start this little hand going, it starts keeping time on this dial, the central seconds hand, as well as this dial on the side here, and I'll just leave that going. You can stop that and then restart it whenever you'd like. It's a beautiful thing. It is a hand-winding movement, so that's nice. You have a very nice visible balance wheel there, which is beautiful. It is a full 12-hour chronograph, which is great. It has a jumping hour hand, which we'll talk about in a moment there. And it is just overall a very nice movement. It's also very nicely done here. You can see here the movement finishing on it is just great. It is not the most open case back, right? If we compare this, for instance, to the Speedmaster 300, which is an automatic, mind you, so it has a weight in the back there. There's a little bit more of the guts of it exposed, but at the same time, it's a very, very attractive package in person. The way that the striping plays with the light is great. It is also a master chronometer, as you see right there on the bottom of the dial there. That is great. That's a very, very nice thing. It means that it is an anti-magnetic movement, which means you just don't have to worry at all about magnetizing your wristwatch. And it also guarantees that this will be running within plus 0 to plus 5 seconds per day, which is a level of accuracy which is absolutely fine in a mechanical wristwatch, right? Quartz will always be a little more accurate than that, but still, ooh, this is good. This is good and accurate. So the movement on this guy is great. And I very much like the fit. All of that is a beautiful thing. The other thing I do want to highlight are the jumping hour hands. This is a feature that you don't know you need until you, realize you need it, which is actually the same thing with everything in life, but I'll go ahead and move on. If you pull this guy out to the second position here, what you're going to see is I can move the hour hand. And I can move the hour hand independently of the minute hand, right? The seconds is still running. The chronograph is even still running. But I'm able to move the hour hand however I would like, forward or backwards. This is really, really nice for a couple of things. A, it acts as a quick set date, right? If it's the 10th, I can just kind of advance around this way. But it also means that if you're, for instance, traveling, all you need to do is pull the crown out to the first position and then adjust the number of hours and then push it back in. You didn't lose the accuracy of the watch. Your second hand is still where it should be. You didn't have to change anything else. It's just, pardon me, it's just a really great feature. I'm a really big fan of a jump hour. It works really well, and as far as I'm concerned, that's the best way to implement that. So I'm a big fan of that. Next thing, the pushes on this guy. These little guys right here, if I press this guy, it stops the running chronometer, so I can read this and go, oh, okay, cool. And by the way, this is a tachymeter, which allows you to, if you go between 2 points, you can measure how long you, basically your hourly rate, right? So that's kind of a cool thing. But anyways, I digress. You also have a pusher down on the bottom here that resets the chronograph. So this guy starts and stops it, and this guy resets it. And in fact, while the chronograph is running, this guy is unable to be pressed, which is good, well, because it wouldn't make sense to reset it while it's running, right? So, but they're very, very satisfying buttons. That's a silly thing to say, but it's really not. For this kind of price point, every button should be satisfying, and this is a very good one, right? It has a very nice, good, trigger, detent, etc. It works very well. So I appreciate that very much. Next thing, the look of this guy is great. If we zoom in here, what we see is this has a very vintagey sort of look, right? A lot of this typography, a lot of the whole affair here is very vintage. It's very, frankly, attractive. I just find this watch very nice. It's got a kind of throwbacky elements to it. It's beautiful. It's old school cool. And I really do appreciate that. It is also very much an effortful watch. And this sounds like something one shouldn't have to say about an $8,600 wristwatch, but by God, these days you kind of do, right? A lot of the big Swiss companies are very, very intensely lazy. They're trying real hard not to implement anything. They skimp every pen. Well, okay, that's how it feels to me as a consumer, right? But this actually feels very much effortful, right? It feels like they're trying their best to put in good features. They're trying to really dial up the value here, although they're certainly not doing that in the price point, but still, they've got lots of good features. They've got a good bracelet. They've got great finishing. This is what Omega feels like when they're really trying hard. Everything but the price here is pushing and is moving forward. This feels like a very real improvement on a watch, and in a lot of ways, in that way, feels a lot like this guy did, which I reviewed previously, the Speedmaster 300, which is absolutely, that, like, they're trying to advance the state of the art, and I like that a lot. Then finally, on the good side, the dial here is just amazing. Oh, my God. So if you look at this guy, one of the things you'll immediately notice is that there is depth to this dial, right? Because you have the indices, which are applied, sticking up here, 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 here. And so they're one level of this, along with the hands and whatnot. Then you have the central face of it, which has a little bit of sunburstitude. I'll see if I can show that off with a flashlight here. What you're going to see here is, yeah, so you've got a little bit of sunburst going on this dial, which is a beautiful thing. You have a little bit of depth because you go down into these subdials. They are lowered down in there. You have a date window, which is there, but it's actually not that deep, which is a beautiful thing. And, you know, I got to say, the version with the polished indices here, rather than kind of the recesses with lume filled, is in the black version. That is very, very nice. And they're super legible, right? I can kind of cut off a lot of the direct light, and you still see reflections on those indices there because that's what polished surfaces do. So even though they are fully lumed, and in fact the lume is quite good. I'll go ahead and charge the lume off the camera here with a powerful flashlight. What we're going to see here is, yeah, lume is absolutely solid looking. No real complaints there. And so, you know what? This dial is just great. And with the broad arrow headset, as a handset that is, as well as the fact that this green is actually very subtle. Right, it is green, but in a lot of lights, it ends up looking kind of darkish. Ends up kind of blackish. Well, yeah, in dark lights, it looks dark. Weird. Go figure. But anyways, I like that very much. And just the textural blend, even the wife loved this. And she's not a person who generally loves watches that I bring home. So this is a wonderful watch, in my estimation. The beauty of it is very high. So to me, all of that is the good. Is that it has an amazing dial. It's very effortful with a vintage look, satisfying pushes, a jump hour feature, which is always nice, beautiful finishing, movement finishing, a master chronometer rating, which means it will be suitably accurate, a very nice movement within it, great case polishing, the sapphire on both sides, a nice bracelet, and it is not Moonwatch marketed. By the way, speaking of the sapphire, this whole thing here is domed sapphire, which is a very nice little thing. So, okay, on the great side to me, what's amazing about this watch, most of all, is that this feels normal. What I mean by that is you will very often get chronograph watches that have that built-in stopwatch function that are very, very big and thick. Here's an example from Seiko. This is a very large, very thick chronograph, right? And what we see here is that this is ridiculously large in every dimension, and this ends up feeling not so different than any other Omega. And mind you, Omegas are generally a little too thick on their own, but this doesn't end up wearing and feeling all that different from this Omega Speedmaster 300 here, right? In terms of thickness, yeah, this guy's a little bit thicker, but not by a huge margin. These two watches end up feeling roughly similar, and mind you, this is an automatic, so that's one of the areas where they were able to save a little space, but this wears very, very well. Even on my 6.25-inch wrist here, this ends up fitting well. It ends up sitting well on the wrist. It's just a beautiful thing. And so this feels like a watch that I could wear every day and not feel like I have a boat anchor on my wrist. And that's not something that can be said about most modern chronographs. Usually they're big, thick, and out of control. This one feels like any other watch. It just happens to pack some extra horological excellence. This is a chrono I would absolutely wear, and where I feel like there is no real disadvantage to having that extra chrono bit, at least in terms of size. So to me, that's what's great here, is this is sized to feel like a normal watch. On the bad side, one downside to a chronograph movement is it adds complexity, right? Unless you need that added functionality of being able to time something, you're going to end up spending more at the time of service because there are more parts, there's more complexity, more to look through. You're also going to lose maybe a little bit of durability relative to a non-chrono. That's not a huge difference, but it is definitely a thing. You also do add some thickness, or in this case, you keep about the same thickness as a three-hand version, but you lose the automatic winding, which is a nice convenience feature, and you get a less readable seconds hand because during normal running, this guy is stopped, right? And the second hand is this guy over here. And so if you need to time things with the second and you're not planning to actually time it with the chrono, then a little bit less of a downside, or a little bit of a downside there. Next thing, this is a hand wind only watch. The only way to wind this watch is by taking it and turning the crown here. This is not a screw down crown, so that's a very easy process, but it is definitely a thing you want to consider. And I'll also say that the lume on this guy is a little tiny bit thin on the minute hand. It's maybe, here, I'll zoom in a little bit. Maybe you can see this. But the central area of the minute hand that fades away a little bit sooner than elsewhere just feels like they didn't get quite a full coat on the minute hand on this guy. It's not the end of the world, but it is a little tiny detail. And at $8,600, by God, every little tiny detail had better be perfect. It's not bad. It's not, frankly, even defective. It's just a thing that I noticed there. Moving on to things that are a little bit more problematic here. One thing I will say is that if you look at the back of this guy, it is gorgeous. I really genuinely like the back of this, and you see the balance wheel there moving, which is the thing that is literally keeping the time, because this is a mechanical wristwatch, but it is also a little bit less impressive than some of the other Speedmasters out there. There are some other ones that have very complicated looking back movements. This guy has a lot of that complication covered with a plate, right? So it's not the end of the world, but it is a thing you want to consider there. Next thing, the toolless quick adjust on this guy. Here, I'll zoom in to show you this. The way that this often works for Omega is something more like this on the 300 here. And so what you can do is you press this down, and you can get about a full link worth of extension here. You get several different steps. And especially on the Speedmaster Pro, you can get a bunch of length off of this guy. Whereas on this guy, the only difference between the fully extended and the fully not extended, see, watch, this is the fully, pulled in version. And if I press this down, I have gotten that much more space. Here, I'll push it back in. And what we see here is this is winning you maybe a millimeter or so, right? Maybe slightly longer. I haven't gone in there and measured, but it is not a very large distinction, right? This is only, there is only one piece there. And the problem is, I mean, in a lot of ways, this is standing in for a half link, right? So you can make this fit you perfectly with the quick link at one, but I want more movement there because as your wrist swells, oftentimes it may swell more than a millimeter, right? That is not necessarily the full extent of the swellulation that you're going to deal with, and as a result, you're going to be high and dry here, and so you're either leaving the watch a little too loose most of the time, and then using this guy to tighten it up, or, yeah, so I really wish that they had made this clasp a little bit longer, and then given me maybe 2 or 3 more levels of adjust here. That way I could make up for, more than a link worth of change. This has the feeling of a toolless quick adjust that is just, giving you effectively a half link, and that's not enough. And so I appreciate that they put one in at all. That's good, but why not just do it for real? Why not just use a clasp like they have on this guy that gives you more extension? It's thinner, yeah, I'll give you that, but it's kind of disappointing there. Omega can do this better than they did here. Next thing, this is only a 5 atmosphere water resistance. Now, I know what you're thinking, Nick. It's a chronograph, right? You've got all these buttons here. There's no screw-down crown. Of course it is. Yeah, I'll give you that. And to be clear, 5 atmospheres is, absolutely splash-proof, and frankly, it should be okay even if you end up in the drink for a moment or two, but just don't treat it as a waterproof watch, right? This is my personal advice. Some people are like, oh my God, you can swim with 5 atmospheres. Like, you can, but are you going to risk it? I don't know about that, right? Given that this has no screw down anything on it, and over time those seals will wear down, I think you're better suited treating this as a watch that is waterproof enough for daily life, but not waterproof enough for water, right? And so this is just, you're just one little bit of rubber away from a very expensive repair. And so it's a little bit disappointing, especially relative to some of the other, 300 meter sort of water resist that you see on a lot of their other stuff. That feels like a step down. But again, not the end of the world, right? This is kind of a dressy chronograph. It's meant for space, rather. Well, I guess this is just for speed, but still, rather than for the water. And then finally, the worst part of this watch, by a mile, unfortunately, is the price. This is an $8,600 watch retail price, and this is just plain a bunch of money. And Omega's pricing keeps going up and up and up and up, and it's ridiculous, right? This is a great watch, but I want to be very clear. You are paying for the brand almost as much as you are paying for the watch itself, right? This is great. There's a lot of joy here, but the same physical object would be a lot cheaper from a different brand, right? Without any kind of a doubt here. Value is not on the table, and you will lose a non-trivial portion of that extra pricing when you walk out the door. This same exact model of this watch, this reference number, I just did a quick scan, and they're selling around $7,500, someplace between $7,000 and $8,000 on the secondary market in pristine condition. So you need to understand that when you buy this new, if you pay full bill retail, which you, by the way, shouldn't, you will lose about $1,000 if you turn around to sell it. And so as Omega needlessly increases the retail prices more and more and more on every watch they make, it becomes more and more important that you do not pay retail price, right? So you should talk to your authorized distributor, or heck, talk to mine, talk to DK. see if you can get some of that Omega tax to disappear, because it is very, very much a factor. And in a time when everything is getting more and more expensive, Omega's pricing is decidedly bad. And it is the biggest problem this watch has by far. It is inaccessible by design in terms of price point. And that's a really ugly thing for people who want a functional timepiece. So to me, all of that is the bad. It's that the retail price is very high. It is only 5 atmosphere water resistance, which is fine, but, you know, keep that in mind. It has a disappointing toolless adjust. They could have done a lot more change there. The rear view is just not as impressive as some of the other Speedmasters. The lume is a little thin on the minute hand. It is hand wind only, and the chronographs add a little bit of complexity that you're going to pay for a little bit later down the road. Ugly-wise, the price isn't quite so bad to be ugly given the amount of effort they put in this, but it's real close. But I'm just going to go into your final conclusion here, which is that this is actually a very nice watch. I mean, it doesn't have the Moonwatch marketing slop, which I appreciate. It's got a nice bracelet, full anti-reflective sapphire, great casework, a nice movement with lots of features, a very nice accuracy spec. It's finished beautifully with nice pushes, a nice look, lots of effort overall. I mean, look, the little Omega thing and matching polish, so yeah. A nice effort, an excellent dial in proportions that make this a watch that is very, very complicated, but also very, very wearable and feels very normal on the wrist. Of course, chronographs, like I said, add complexity. It is hand wound only. The minute hand lume is inconsistent. The toolless adjust is better than nothing, but it's worse than Omega's normal option. It is not super robust to water, and it is exceedingly expensive. My final conclusion, though, was this is a watch that I would love to own. It is really, really nice. It is a beautiful piece of machining art, both on the front and, frankly, on the back. It is excellently done. It is wearable for somebody with wrists of my size, right? And it shows uncharacteristic amounts of effort for a big Swiss brand. I would own the vintage black version of this in an absolute heartbeat, except for one issue. And that is that my relationship to money at this moment is such that another $9 grand can't just disappear into my wrist. Right, I'm a lucky man, but I'm not that lucky. And especially given that I don't need the fancy chronograph features. There's really not that much I'm timing in my life. And the things that I do need to time, I'm doing so with much, well, frankly, non-human measurement equipment, right? And so that's a thing. And so even though that's the thing that makes it most unique, that's not what I'm really after. So this may not be what I'd save up towards anyways, especially when I could get a couple of really amazing watches for the price of this. So ultimately, this is a watch I'm not buying, but that's not for lack of desire. That's less a factor of the watch and more a factor of the wallet. And indeed, that is the only reason that this watch is not a gem. I am, you know, despite my complaints, I am really, really, really impressed with this. I really like it. It is a gem in every way but that price tag. And if this exact watch went up for $5 grand, $5,500 at retail, oh my God, shining gem. I would be on the horn to DK already. Like, dude, what can you do for me? But at $8,600, it is just a bridge too far. There is just too much markup in there to let the excellence that is here win the day. And so with money in the mix, this just misses gem status, even though I love it and I want it. But if your relationship to money is different, if $9 grand is not a particularly problematic amount of money for you, then good, you're lucky. Enjoy. But more importantly, you know, if you can get it that way, or if you got a price that you're perfectly comfortable at with a sympathetic dealer, then buy the damn watch, because this is good. This is by far my favorite watch in the Speedmaster lineup. Absolutely 100%. It is a great daily wear timepiece for folks of any wrist size. This is a chronograph that I think a lot of people could wear just as their only watch, and they would love it, right? That is a beautiful thing. It is an incredibly effortful piece, and it's relatively timeless, and it's just beautifully done in, I think, every meaningful way. And so if you are a person who just wants a watch and you're looking for value, keep looking. This ain't where you're going here. But if you're looking for the very best daily wear chronograph I have ever handled, then I think the Speedmaster 57 here, this master coaxial version, is going to be absolutely the right Speedmaster for you. So anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you. And oh boy, this is nice. Have a good one, everybody. Bye now.